Thank you all for coming. I am Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. Before I begin, let me just do a little housework here. First and foremost, I want to extend my thanks, my humble thanks, to the 6 candidates for District Attorney of Suffolk County for coming in to be a part of this experience. Can we please have a hand for these 6? I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the officers, the staff, and the management of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department and the staff and management of the ACLU for putting this all together. Can we please have a hand for them? Although I would like to claim this as an original idea, this was not my idea. I believe it was John Ward from the ACLU who gave me a buzz and asked if we'd be interested in being a part of an experience like this, to which I thought that made a lot of sense. When he approached me with it, the thing that I thought about first and foremost, believe it or not, was the Pledge of Allegiance. And there were a couple of words there that jumped out at me. And one was nation, the other was indivisible, and the other was with liberty and justice for all. And I think that's crucially important because in a lot of instances, people that are in facilities like mine haven't been afforded liberty and justice. Now hear me clearly. There are people that should be in prison to pay a debt to society. But then there are a lot of people that are battling substance abuse issues or mental health issues. And so the question in my mind is, should they actually be in jail or should they be in a diversionary program? 65% of the population here in the Suffolk County House of Correction is black or brown. That's in a Commonwealth where the same demographic is 18%. How do you get 65 out of 18? Something's wrong with our system. We really need to look at that. 42% of my population here suffers from mental illness, from the most aggressive to the most passive. Almost 70% suffers from substance abuse or alcohol abuse. These are folk that should be somewhere else, frankly. If you're committing crime to feed an illness, we really need to look at how we mete out punishment. And so having the DA candidates here to answer these questions and talk to these folks about what it is that they would do when they become district attorney, we think is crucially important. And one of the things that we've said to the men and women that are going to ask the questions today is that this really is a civic engagement. Civics is that course in school that teaches you how community and government work together. And just because you are incarcerated does not make you a lesser citizen. It does not mean that you should not have a voice in moving this Commonwealth and this country and this society forward. Now I'll close by saying that we have a lot of divisiveness taking place right now across the country. It's not just in Washington, it's not just in Massachusetts, it's across the country. At the end of the day, we are our brothers and sisters keepers, and we should not forget that. We have to take care of our individual selves, our families, and our communities. So today is the first step in what we hope will be replicated by other facilities like this across the Commonwealth and across the country. With that said, I'd like to bring to the microphone now the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Office of the ACLU, Ms. Rachael Rollins.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Sheriff Tompkins. On behalf of the ACLU and our many network partners of the What a Difference a DA Makes voter education campaign, we'd like to thank, first of all, the candidates for joining us here this morning, Secretary Andrea Cabral for moderating our forum today. I'm going to give a shout out especially to my colleagues, Rasan Hall, who's the director of the ACLU Racial Justice Program and also the leader of the What a Difference a DA Makes campaign. Also Mr. Udi Ofer from the National ACLU Smart Justice Campaign, who's here with us today because he's hoping to take what we model here today and take it across the nation, so that this isn't just staying here in Massachusetts. And also to our political director, Whitney Taylor, who helped to build the campaign from the very beginning and conceived of it. I also want to especially thank the Sheriff County the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department and Sheriff Tompkins for hosting us and inviting the ACLU to co-host here today. This is the first time that we're aware of in the nation's history that we've had a candidate forum like this in House of Corrections. So this is a really big deal. And finally, in particular, I really want to thank all of you who are here today to ask your questions. You know, your votes and most importantly, your voices really matter. Your questions are going to equip other voters around the Commonwealth with information about where these candidates stand on issues of justice, on issues of fairness, and on issues of power. The ACLU is a nonpartisan, law-reform, policy reform organization, and we have a nearly 100-year history of trying to bring public officials accountable and office holders accountable for civil rights and civil liberties issues. But this is the first time in our 100-year history that we've ever had a prosecutor accountability voter education campaign. And the reason we did that is that we did a poll of voters in Massachusetts, and we found out that 4 out of 10 voters in Massachusetts weren't aware that prosecutors are elected officials, accountable to no one except the voters at the time of the vote. And so when we launched this campaign, What a Difference a DA Makes, last December, we set out in a nonpartisan way to inform people about the many ways that district attorneys have an impact on people, families, and communities in Massachusetts every day. So thank you all for participating in our campaign and making this a historic day. Thank you.
So without much further ado, let me introduce Andrea Cabral, who's going to be our moderator today. Andrea not only worked at the DA's office for many years, ran several of their divisions, she knows the department intimately. She was also sheriff here prior to me being the sheriff. In fact, she recruited me. Thank you very much, Andrea. She recruited me to come over to the sheriff's department, and she ended her career in public service as the executive director of the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety. So if anyone knows everything about what DAs should do and how they should comport themselves and what we need to do as a community to strengthen our communities, that would be Ms. Andrea Cabral.
Good morning, can you hear me? Oh, I guess you can. Thank you very much, Sheriff Tompkins. Good morning to all of you, and thank all of you, those of you in the audience, members of the media, certainly the candidates and our questioners today. It is wonderful to see you here. Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate and thank you for knowing that what you're doing here today and participating is important. On behalf of all of the participants, and I'll save all the candidates time by doing this, I will thank Sheriff Tompkins, Superintendent Yolanda Smith, Superintendent Sumter, the Sheriff's Office, the ACLU, Carol Rose, Rasad Hall, for co-hosting this event and inviting me to moderate. I just wanted to give you guys less time to thank people and more time to answer the questions. So in addition, candidates, to the Suffolk County, the registered Suffolk County voters who are seated here before you, we're also joined by representatives of some of the agencies that provide services to the Sheriff's Office. And at the end of the forum, I'll invite them to come up as a group to introduce themselves, and they will give you a brief, no more than 90-second overview of the agency they represent and the services that it provides. So let's get started with the rules of the road. The forum will begin with the introduction of the candidates. After I call your name, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Each questioner will have no more than a minute to ask a question, and the respondent will have a minute to answer. Rebuttal will be at my discretion, and let me say a few words about that. The mere mention of another candidate's name will not trigger a rebuttal or an opportunity to rebut. I will be listening closely for statements that do warrant rebuttal time for candidates. Your constituents are here to learn about you from you. Your positions, your opinions, your prospective policies, your intentions, should you be elected district attorney, are what matter. I would encourage you to place your focus there. The differences among you and between you will still be apparent, and the less time spent on rebuttal means more time for questions and answers. In general, please respond to the questions as directly as possible, and whenever possible, please preface your responses with a yes or a no if the question is about your position on a particular issue. Our timekeepers today are Hillary Nakima and Whitney Taylor. Thank you very much for participating. They will alert you and me at the 30-second and 10-second marks. They will also hold up, when you're down to 0 seconds, they'll hold up a red sign that you cannot miss that says stop, and no matter where you are in your response, you should close at that point. If you don't, I will remind you. In the last 10 minutes, each candidate will have 90 seconds to make a closing statement, followed by closing remarks from Rasan Hall, and the forum will adjourn. Let's begin. Starting right to left, the candidates will introduce themselves, starting first with Linda Champion.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Linda Champion. I'm a candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney. By way of background, I'm a formerly homeless teenager who moved to Boston when I was 18. I look out at all of you and understand sort of the dilemmas that you face when you are struggling to kind of navigate and find your way in life. I was able to get a job. I was able to work 2 jobs and go to school at night to support myself. I eventually finished law school at Suffolk University, but my last year of law school, I got pregnant and I became a single mother. The trials that you face and endure just working in an environment where you have no support system is very difficult. And it is my hope that with my life experiences, particularly the fact that I have worked in this community for 15 years as a lawyer, that I've also raised a daughter here who's now 17, the fact that I've struggled through life and have been a homeless teen here in the city of Boston, and the fact that I have an immigrant mother who came to this country alone with my father, who was a Vietnam War veteran. My mother was seeking a better life, and my father came back from the Vietnam War very damaged and suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. The trials that people see with families, particularly families in need of services, is very real. It's not often that people look to get help when they are struggling. I know for my mom, she never got help. She suffered and endured the abuse at the hands of my father for many, many years until she was forced, in order to protect her own children, to leave that situation. So for me, being a prosecutor in this community, understanding my life experiences and what I can bring to this position, I feel that I'm the best candidate for this job. Thank you.
I'll speak really loudly. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Maloney. I'm the only independent in this race. My background: I graduated Providence College in 2002. I graduated New England School of Law in 2006. The second I graduated, I hung up my own shingle. I've never been a prosecutor. I've worked with defendants and people charged with misdemeanors and life felonies and everything in between for 10 years. I am an incredibly strong proponent of criminal justice reform. And in fact, I think the recent legislation can be expounded upon. I've dealt with individuals that suffer from mental health and addiction far too long. In the past 12 months alone, I can't tell you how many people have taken their own life and OD'd on my watch. I'm disgusted with it. I originally got into this industry because I am an adrenaline junkie, and the idea of impaneling a jury, it invigorated me. That was my draw in 10 years ago. That's my background. Having seen the protocols, the mechanisms by which these individuals are dealt with on a day-to-day, it changed my perspective. In addition to being a criminal defense attorney, I am a serial entrepreneur. In December 2017, I sold my 183 medical marijuana employees. I sold my company, Canacare Dogs, which employed 183 individuals. We sold it in December 2017, and I am here now because I've seen, in part, the differences that, on a small scope, marijuana can help individuals break out the addiction. It is an exit drug. I am a strong proponent. I look forward to you learning more about who I am, what I offer, and what my platform is over the coming months. Thank you very much.
I will take responsibility for this because I did not make it clear, it did not occur to me that anybody would stand up, but the candidates should remain seated for their introductions, their responses to questions, and their closing statements. That was not Mr. Maloney's fault. I did not say that at the beginning of the forum, so I take responsibility for that, but level playing field here, guys. Shannon McAuliffe?
Thank you. My name is Shannon McAuliffe, and what I want to tell you is a little bit of what I know from experience. And what I know is that a lot of you landed here because you struggled with addiction or instability or trauma. And what I also know is that you're all smart and insightful, and I know that you all desperately want a different life and a life where you can be free. But what happens when you're here is you've lost your jobs, you've lost your housing, you've lost the presence of the people that you love, and a lot of times what you lose is really who you are, because here you're often identified as a number. And when you get out, what we'd love to see is just to push that reset button, but what we also know is that your life is probably going to be harder, not better, when you leave here, because you came in with a handful of challenges and you'll probably leave with a boatload. And I know this because this isn't my first time here or my 50th time in this building or my 100th. For 15 years I've been coming to this room because the choices I made of what to do with my law degree. I was a public defender for 12 years in Suffolk County, and I literally became a public defender because I wanted to change the world, one courtroom and one lifetime at a time. And what I saw was a system that failed at every single turn, from overcharging, from high bails, from handing out ineffective mandatory minimum sentences. So after 12 years, what I did is I left and I became the director of a program called ROCA. It's a nonprofit that helps really high-risk young men get to the things that make them strong. Out of all the young men at ROCA for 2 years or more, 79% have no new arrests for any new offenses. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I want to bring to you as DA. Smart, strategic alternatives to jail that actually work. I want to use an anything and everything approach that gets you to the programs and the services that you need to make you strong and lift you up and out of the system and up and out of this jail, because that's what makes us strong, saves us money, increases our safety, and builds people, doesn't destroy them. That's what I'm about.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Henning. I've been a resident and lifelong resident of Suffolk County for virtually my entire life. I was born in Boston. I live in Dorchester now, and I've committed my professional and personal life to working with and trying to protect people in Suffolk County. I started as a prosecutor back in 2006, and for the first 5 years of my life as a prosecutor, I worked primarily on gun prosecution cases in the city of Boston. Around 2009, I started working at an after-school program called College Bound Dorchester. And as a basketball coach and mentor, I came in contact with young men that I had prosecuted. In particular, the starting point guard on the basketball team was a young man that we had put into this very facility. And the experience with him and with other people that I came into contact with changed my perspective on the role that we have as prosecutors and what we can do in order to make sure that the community is safe. I quit my job and I became a teacher. And I did that because I wanted to make sure I worked in every way possible to interrupt the cycle that causes people to end up in housing corrections, in correctional facilities. And when I went back to the district attorney's office in 2013, I took those experiences with me, and that's the vision I would bring to the district attorney's office if I'm elected. I have worked on the most serious cases that we face in this community: homicide cases, shootings, right now the chief of the gang unit. But I also know the value and the importance of giving people a second chance, because that's the work that I've done in my personal life. It's the work that I've done as a prosecutor, and it's the vision that I will bring to the office if I'm fortunate enough to be elected. The primary responsibility of the district attorney is to make sure that when you leave this community in this correctional facility and you go back out to Suffolk County, that the community you come into is a safe place. Public safety is our primary goal, but I also know that there is room and it is important for us to work with people to give them a second chance so that they are successful and you are successful when you come back out. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you very much for being here.
I'm Rachael Rollins. I want to thank everyone for coming here. I'm really excited about the opportunity to tell you guys a little bit about my background. I have been a lawyer for 21 years. During that time, I've been a prosecutor for 7 of those years. I've been a criminal defense attorney, but I also, unlike anyone up here, have a lived experience where I'm the oldest of 5 children. 2 of my siblings have been in state and federal, 3 of my siblings have been in state and federal prison. I visited family members here. I don't look at you as simply defendants. I haven't only interacted with black and brown people in a criminal context, which a lot of people up here have. I look at you as possibly being my sister, my brother, my neighbor, people I go to church with, family members that run track with my daughter. So I have a lived experience of seeing the criminal justice system on every single different side. I also have managed incredibly large groups of people. So the district attorney's office is about 275 people, over 150 lawyers. I had the fortune under Governor Carvalho to be the first woman general counsel in the history of the MBTA. I also was the general counsel of the Mass Department of Transportation and Massport. And in those roles, I supervised over 150 people, lots of lawyers. When I left Massport, I went to Harvard Business School and did a wonderful program there about change management. And I'm excited about all of those skills that I have to bring them to this job. I really believe, guys, that we need a criminal justice system where if you were born in Mission Hill or Beacon Hill, you get the exact same treatment. That we can change right now wealth and race disparities in the criminal justice system, and that we can stop criminalizing mental illness, addiction, and poverty. I hope you listen to what it is I have to say, and that I can earn you or your family's vote. Thank you very much.
This is a note for the members of the media. Please do not interact with the questioners that we have for the forum today. They are trying to pay attention to candidates. That's the purpose of the forum, so please do not ask them questions during the forum. They will be available afterward.
Good morning, everyone. I am State Representative Evandro Carvalho. I'm also a former prosecutor, and I live in up the street of Dorchester with my wife and daughter, Eliana, who's 3 years old. I'm running for district attorney because of this report. It says the geography of incarceration. This report says that 56% of the people in this facility come from Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan. And those communities only compose 30% of Boston. That's not even all of Suffolk County. I grew up in Upper Swan, went to National Park High School. I'm the one person up here that is 2 decisions away from sitting being part of it. I have friends that killed me, friends who Puerto Rico, Cape Verde Islands, where I came from at 15 years old, they know no English. I had the privilege to go to law school, to go to UMass Amherst, and then go to Howard University of Law in DC, and work for a large company, large firm, but decided to come back to our communities, to raise a family here. Prosecuting cases in Roxbury District Court, so I know how to prosecute cases. Prosecuting gun cases, I know how guns scare our communities. But I also know how to use my discretion to make sure that people did not need to be in jail go to jail. When I was a prosecutor, I saw that the system was broken because I saw all of you psyched into the system. I saw my community. So I became a lawmaker and changed that. I've been part of the solution. Just this past April, we passed the most comprehensive criminal justice reform in the history of Massachusetts. I was one of the key leaders in getting that done. So for me, it's a matter of time to go and implement new tools that we have to not only lock people up, but also focus on lifting people up, giving people second chances, prevention and preemption. That's why I'm the best candidate to be the next district attorney we will see today. Thank you.
Okay, let's begin. Candidates, each of the 34 registered voters who will ask you questions today wrote their questions and submitted them. 10 of them will be asked during this forum. My understanding is that the candidates have agreed to have the remaining 24 questions submitted to them directly and will provide written responses. I will ask the first question and the last question. Thereafter, I will, to the questioners, I will call your name. If you're one of the people who's going to give a question at the forum, please approach the microphone, introduce yourself, and ask your question. Question 1 has 2 parts. What prohibitions does Massachusetts currently place on voting by persons convicted of or incarcerated for committing a crime? And what, if any, prohibitions on voting by this population do you think are appropriate? Starting first with Linda Champion, going right to left.
So Massachusetts is one of the states, thankfully, that if you have been convicted of committing a crime and you've served your time and you are now released, you can actually vote. So when I was out on the campaign trail and I was asking for signatures, a lot of people would say, no, I can't sign your form because I served a felony. So the great news is if you are detained on a misdemeanor, if you're in pretrial detainment, you can actually complete an absentee ballot form and you can submit that absentee ballot form. It's my understanding in speaking with organizations in the Commonwealth that some jails are not providing absentee ballot forms to people who are being detained pre-trial. So the person is innocent, obviously, until they're proven guilty. And then the other issue is that we need to make sure that we're getting people out to vote once they're released and making sure that people are registered to vote. So just because you've served time.
I just remind you that the question is, what prohibitions does Massachusetts place on voting by persons convicted of or incarcerated for committing a crime, and what, if any, prohibitions on voting by this population do you think are appropriate? Do you agree with
I don't think any prohibitions on voting are appropriate. If we judge someone or a group of individuals when they're at their lowest point in their life, then I think we all have a great deal of work to do, because we've all been at a pretty low point. We've all been forced to make decisions that perhaps were not made, perhaps that we would choose alternative, make a different decision if we could do it all over again. People are entitled to a second chance. I certainly don't judge them, but I certainly ask them to be held accountable. And I think when you get into this regarding minimum mandatory, which I strongly oppose, but we don't, if we hold someone, if we judge them when they're at their absolute lowest, we're setting ourselves up for failure. I absolutely support anyone and everyone's ability to vote.
And what is the current status of the law with regard to that? That was the first part of the question.
Fair enough. I want to do some additional research on this, to be totally candid, but as I do understand it, Mass is one of the very few states that enables individuals with a record to still vote. So don't have any misconceptions, guys. Get over there. Or ask for an absentee, excuse me.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Thank you. So the only prohibition in Massachusetts on voting is if you are currently serving time for a felony. If you are serving time for a misdemeanor, you are allowed to vote. And I believe, as Linda said, it does get a little bit tricky. So if you're in on bail status or in serving on a misdemeanor, you do have to get an absentee ballot. It's not as easy as just getting an absentee ballot. You actually have to send in a request, and then they send you back a form, and I think that you then fill it out again, and then you get the actual absentee ballot and have to send it in. So it's tricky and it's tough, but those are the prohibitions, and I don't agree with any prohibitions. I think everybody should vote no matter what you are actually in jail for. This is a democracy. Everybody's voice matters, and we should all be able to vote.
Mr. Henning?
The current status of the law is, as Ms. McAuliffe described and as Ms. Champion described it. If you're serving time on a felony conviction, you're unable to vote. If you're serving time on a misdemeanor conviction, you're able to vote. You're able to apply for an absentee ballot. And I think it's important that when you have programs like this, and people like Val Harris and True CLA and other guys in this facility that are willing to help people for reentry programs, it's very easy to approach them and to say, help me with one of these absentee ballot applications, because they have made it relatively easy now to apply for it. I also think it's important that there's engagement from organizations like Suffolk County House of Corrections and the ACLU, so that people who are serving time in a custody situation like this have the opportunity to do what you guys are doing. And I think that it's probably something where I'm imposing on Sheriff Tompkins, but you'd probably be willing to hold other forums like this for other types of races, because it is important for your voice to be heard through the process.
So this is where reality comes to play, right? So for family members, when you're a lawyer and you come in and visit your client, it's very easy to show your ID, you zip through and whatever. For family members, when we have to get you money, clothes, visits, we are constantly told, oh, that was last Thursday. Oh, no, the rules changed. Oh, you have to fill in this form and that form. So getting an absentee ballot and sending in request forms, if it's hard for people that are free, I can't imagine what it's like for people that are currently incarcerated. So we need to make the system easier for you. I don't understand why there aren't absentee ballots everywhere around here. Actually, I do understand why, because people don't want you to vote, because then you would have a voice to actually speak about the conditions that you're held in and the things you would like to change. So I think that needs to change immediately, and we should be talking to sheriffs and houses of corrections, Department of Corrections, about making sure you have access to those documents.
Mr. Cabral?
Voting rights is a fundamental right, and for many of us historically in the U.S., you know, this is a right that we've obtained all of 50 years ago. People literally have to die for it. So to me, it doesn't, we shouldn't have any restriction whatsoever in terms of people being able to vote, even if they're doing, you know, life. Because often individuals that are incarcerated, they become aware of the circumstances of how they got there, and they want to change to make sure that others don't follow suit. In fact, you know, I was talking to someone who's on life right now recently, and he's advocating for what's going on in jail, in prison, in Bridgewater, about visiting rights. So people almost, you know, we have, to the extent Malcolm X, who went to prison and became aware of the circumstances. So the fact that he was able to come out and make changes in life makes sense. So for me, again, voting rights are a fundamental right, and we shouldn't prohibit people, no matter the circumstances, from voting.
Okay. The women who are going to ask questions will approach the podium furthest from me, and the men, the podium closest to me. Our first question will come from Shante Graham.
Hi, my name is Shante Graham. My question is, I know that some of you are current or former assistant district attorneys, so this question is for you. Why is there such pressure by the Commonwealth to take plea bargains rather than go to trial?
And the way we'll handle this is for those that have not are not former prosecutors. You will be given a minute to give your response to it, even if though you're not. She's not asking you directly, but we'll start with people who have been former prosecutors. So we'll start with Evandro, go to Rachel, then Greg, then Linda, and then Michael, Maloney, and Shannon McAuliffe will answer.
A couple of things. This is a very important issue that you're bringing up, so thank you. You know, really, the reality is that the criminal justice system and law enforcement community as a whole for the past 3-4 decades has been about locking people up. So the policies that exist in the books over time have been about making sure we pressure people, you know, to plead or to go to jail, right? But you know, what we're doing now, what I stand for, is moving forward in a better way. Which is, you know, one of the pressures, for instance, is bail, right? Inability to afford bail, so people plead out. And in Massachusetts going forward, that's going to happen less, right? The other thing is mandatory minimums that pressure people to plead, because if you take your trial, you could take this 2.5 years in jail or go on probation for a year or 6 months. So that's another thing that I'm proud that I've been the leader in the House to change. So, you know, the pressure exists because people that control decision making wanted that.
Time.
Thank you, Shante, for your question. There is pressure. The overwhelming majority of cases across the country, very few of them actually go to trial. I believe that the Commonwealth, we overcharge people with crimes, and what we need to do, and we leverage you, right? Once we have you with these crimes, we have situations where we will say, oh, that incident happened at your home where your mother has a Section 8 voucher. And when that becomes, if that becomes public, your mom's gonna lose her housing. Are you gonna plead, right? Or your family's gonna lose. So we're leveraging you, and it's not right. So what we need to do is charge people less and only with the things that they are allegedly have done. What's wonderful about this new criminal justice reform bill is the representative has said, is there's a lot of work being done on bail. Senator Brownsberger, I think, is in the House. He was one of the architects of that criminal justice reform bill and did a wonderful job there. I've met with him many times about this. I'm happy he's endorsing me. We're going to continue working on it.
Shante, one of the issues is what the other candidates have mentioned, which is bail. And it's important, I think, to understand if I'm the district attorney, I'm going to be guiding the office so that bail is only requested prosecutors in cases where ultimately we may end up asking for jail time. Not in misdemeanor cases, not in possession cases, and certainly not in cases where a person is victimized or serving, going through the process because they're addicted to drugs. Number two, as Rachel just mentioned, the Criminal Justice Reform Bill helped to change the way that bail is going to be reviewed, in part because it codified, basically made into law a decision by the SJC last year, called the Brand decision, which asks the courts and all judges to look at the assets and the background of everybody that comes in front of the court so that it's not just a random number. And then the other thing to deal with is we're talking about 30,000 cases a year in Suffolk County, approximately. And as Rachel indicated, a very small percentage can go to trial. I take very seriously any claim where a person has a claim of innocence, where a person has a claim that they're not responsible, and I do not expect and do not plan to have people leverage, especially in those cases.
Thanks, Shante. I believe in speaking the truth. And the reason that people are pressured to plead guilty is because it's easy, because it's the status quo, and that's what the system is set up for. It's set up to stack up the odds against defendants at every single pressure point, from charging and overcharging to asking for cash bail, to then requiring mandatory minimums and going under that only if you decide to plead guilty. I think what's happened is our prosecutor's office has gotten lazy, and because it's easier to do. And what we need to actually do is roll up our sleeves, go back to work, allow people to actually exercise their rights by having trials. And that's why this is so important to have somebody who's been in this system in Suffolk County for 12 years, especially as a defense attorney. I've seen where it goes wrong, I know what needs to change, and that will happen under me as district attorney. There will no longer be the easy way out in the status quo. We need to do different to get different, and that means having a different district attorney.
Thank you for your question. The call of your question specifically is, why are people pressured to plea out, correct? The answer is because people are pressured to plea out because the system is broken. We're talking a little bit about bail, we're talking about minimum mandatories. There are a litany of issues across the board which result in, devil's advocate here, that the prosecutors are overworked. Prosecutors are grossly overworked, and they're dealing with just an influx of cases that really should not be charged. I'm talking, and minimum mandatories are just, they're just icing on the cake. When we're talking briefly about bail, I understand that represented people that, $500 bail might as well be $1 million. They can't post it, right? But how does that affect them 6 months down the line? They make a plea because they want to get out. They make a plea because X, Y, and Z because they're pressured. They shouldn't be in the situation in the first case.
So for me, as a prosecutor in juvenile court in Dorchester District Court and Roxbury District Court, and taking cases from arraignment to trial to full jury trials, I think it's very important for prosecutors to seek and find the truth. And our job is not to figure out who to put in jail. Our job is to figure out what happened, how it happened, and is the person in front of me responsible for those acts. Oftentimes when a green sheet, right, the plea sheet is tendered, it's presented by, through a negotiation with the defense attorney. And I would hope that the defense bar would not be presenting green sheets for a person who is truly innocent. Oftentimes we're dealing with circumstantial evidence, and I can't tell based on that evidence whether or not the person is guilty or whether they're innocent. It's up to the defendant to assert their rights, and if they feel that they're truly innocent, they need to move it to a trial.
Time. Question number 3 will be posed by Eric Miller.
My name is Eric Miller, and my question is centered around sentence enhancements, such as armed career criminals or ACC, and the utilization of juvenile adjudications as being a predicate in such enhancements. I would like to know whether you view the harsh penalties one is subjected to based on infractions committed as a youth to be in the interest of justice.
No, we'll go back down the line right to left.
So for me, with respect to juvenile justice, having served in juvenile court, I feel that we need to look for ways to get kids, particularly children, out of the pipeline to jail. One of the things that often starts is with school-based offenses. And the other issue that we have is once they've developed or built a record in terms of, because I think you said something, the first part of your question had to do with enhancing sentences, right? So I think you're talking about when they start with a juvenile record and they start to build it, and the prosecutor then looks back to a youthful offender record. So I don't think that that is appropriate. And I also don't think it's appropriate for children in high schools or in schools to be building criminal records for non-violent offenses. I think anything that happens at school should remain at school, and the administration there needs to handle it. It's unfortunate that things are being sent to the district courts for us to process, but I don't think children should be building those records.
Sir, the answer to your question is no. It's not in the interest of justice, but it's the way the game is played right now. I have clients right now, open cases, where they're charged with a 10-year minimum mandatory on the back end as a habitual offender because they have an amount, we're talking about drug crimes here, because they have an amount that's consistent with possession. A large amount that's consistent with possession, but a personal use nonetheless because they're so far hooked. The answer to your question is no. But that's kind of easy. The real issue is how do we solve the problem? And we proactively look for ways to preclude or stop individuals from being charged in the first place. I strongly support harm reduction zones, alternative justice techniques, whatever we can do to break the cycle. Now, truthfully, can we stop someone's record that already has a 20-page BOP? No. But young individuals coming through the pipeline, we can stop them from, we can curtail, we can stop them from actually being charged. The answer to your question is a resounding no.
Thank you, Eric. I believe what we've seen in the system is really an incredibly rigid application of things like the Armed Career Criminal Statute. And really what we need is a district attorney who will actually use some discretion. One of my very last cases as a public defender was a man in his 40s who was charged as an armed career criminal facing a 15-year mandatory minimum. And the priors that he had were 20 years old. There were assault and batteries and ADPO, and we all know how that goes, right? It took 3 years to fight the case. And at each turn, I was faced with a system that simply wouldn't bend. He had not been in trouble at all except for this charge from 20 years before. We won the motion to suppress and then won the motion to dismiss and motion to suppress. He stayed out of jail. He hasn't been in trouble since. If it weren't for me being his attorney, he would still be in jail now. But what I can say is he's not. I then hired him at Roca. He did incredibly well as a crew supervisor, and he helped other people build their lives too, and that's what we need to start doing more of.
Eric, thank you for your question. In particular, what you're talking about with sentencing enhancements that date back to someone's juvenile record are prior firearm offenses and prior offenses involving violence. And I think in certain circumstances, looking back on a person who's committed acts of violence on the community can be something that we need to do as prosecutors. But I also think that when it comes to firearm and violent offenses, those aren't all the cases that we're dealing with. And when I was chief of the gang unit in the office, it's something I would continue to do if I'm elected district attorney, is to have a procedure where we review the entire case and the background of the individual, regardless of what they're charged with. And that meant bringing in the person and his attorney and talking not about the facts of the case, but talking about his history, mental health, educational background, health background, anybody that they're connected to in the community, and then doing our due diligence to follow up and see who from the community can verify those things and who can be part of the support system for this person. And sometimes that meant going from a mandatory minimum sentence where a person could be facing 5 years in prison down to a probation where we would all collectively be part of the probationary system and the support system. It doesn't need to be rigidly applied, but it is something to consider.
I believe we should be reviewing the entire case and your history and mental health in every situation. What I look at with respect to juvenile predicate offenses is it's no different to me than Corey, in the sense that if your juvenile record is supposed to be sealed and not taken into account, we should be doing that, number one. Number two, if you've served your debt to society and now under the new criminal justice reform bill, misdemeanors 3 years, felonies 7 years, thank you, Representative. You need to be able to get on with your life. I don't agree with the fact that we're looking at juvenile predicates for ACCs at all.
The armed career criminal offenses are a terrible. These are mandatory minimums that folks have to do. And I can tell you from the start that I don't believe in mentoring member spirit, which is why, again, there's a lawmaker that filed a law to get rid of them, particularly dealing with non-violent drug offenses. We know in Massachusetts particularly that the non-violent drug offenses are, 3/4 of the mentoring members are people of color, right? And then to attach juveniles to that to me makes no sense. So I don't think a crime that a juvenile does should be considered part of that the two violent prior convictions that you may have. And often, as many of you probably know, these are not very violent stuff. Assault battery, assault battery, police officers, other things that are not necessarily very violent. So, I don't believe in mandatory minimums, and I honestly do not think we should even have this 3 strikes law in the laws.
Question 4 will be asked by Ashley. Oh, I'm very sorry, Eric. I'm sorry. And it's my fault because I was talking to Rasan and I shouldn't have been paying attention. But thank you very much for your question.
Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Eric.
This is Ashley McSween.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, with the opioid epidemic taking center stage and women being incarcerated at a much faster rate than men, funding is being focused on drug rehabilitation. Women with no addiction issues are being granted parole. However, they have extremely limited bed program options. If elected, what do you think should be done for women's re-entry programming to ensure that there are housing resources available to those not suffering with addiction?
And I'm going to mix this up by calling on people to answer the question. So the first answer will come from Rachael Rollins.
Thank you, Ashley. So the opioid crisis, we all had to drive through, well, some of us did not drive, but had to come down Maloney and Cass or Mass Ave and see every day what's happening. I was actually late this morning to this event because I got a call that my first cousin overdosed and died in South Carolina this morning, and my aunt found him there. So these are serious issues that are affecting families every single day. Re-entry is incredibly important. I see Kevin Sibley here, who's Mayor Walsh's director of re-entry. I think we need housing for you when you get there. I'm very proud of the work I've done on re-entry housing, trying to have Massachusetts be one of the 11 states or areas in the country that allows for re-entry housing for people with felonies. Because as you know, if you have a felony, you're precluded from Section 8 voucher, and your family's put in a situation to say, I love you, Ashley, but you can't live here, or I love you, Ashley, and you can, but if they find out, you're going to lose your voucher. The DA has a powerful voice. We need to talk about housing and re-entry and make sure we get the services you need.
Linda Champion.
So one of the areas that I've worked on in the community over the last 20 years actually is housing, particularly homelessness to home ownership, low-income housing to home ownership, working through organizations like Urban Edge and helping to develop affordable housing. When you are faced with a housing crisis, which is what we're facing now, we have to start thinking more creatively and outside the box. While there are programs that will create funding and revenue streams for building and sustaining sober houses, one of the questions and concerns that I have is when we're not creating housing for returning citizens and putting returning citizens in a position where they are basically discriminated against with respect to housing. So one of the things we have to do is make sure that for returning citizens, there's no violation of your individual rights to housing, and that if we're going to be true reformers and end recidivism, as the district attorney, it is my job then to make sure that I'm adding to that pot, and some of the money that we have will have to be allocated to your success.
Shannon McAuliffe.
Thank you, Ashley. I don't suppose it's news to you, but what I can tell you is out of our giant budget in our Commonwealth, currently right now we have about $90,000 segmented for reentry. And that means that if about 3,000 people were released last year from being incarcerated, that's about $30 per person. So what we need to do as DA is demand more, go to the legislature, go to the chairman of the House of Ways and Means, and say we simply need more money for reentry. What we have is we've lost SPAN, which is an incredible program that helps so many people coming out. I know the Brook House is waiting for some funding right now. We have a bill that might add about $3 million to reentry, but we have other states in our country that have about, or dedicate about $60 million to reentry. So that's what we need to do. We need to have a fighter as DA who knows how important this is to your success and to our success as a community. And thank you for your question.
Mr. Maloney?
The answer is that we have to involve community leaders that have the ability to provide you better housing, but not just housing, better availability to means, to jobs, to building a resume, to becoming an upstanding member of the Commonwealth once again. But again, that's only ameliorative, but it's certainly not addressing the issue from the get-go. What we really have to do is stop incarcerating people. When we talk about these opioid epidemics, these are individuals asking for help. Gloucester implemented a program called the Angel Initiative, where essentially individuals that are suffering or seeing themselves that perhaps they're going down the wrong path, they proactively go to a police department, they can hand off the paraphernalia, you can hand off the drug and say, help me, and actually proactively be given a ride to a rehabilitation facility. I'm not going to pretend that the rehabilitation facilities aren't without dire need of revamping, but the answer to your question is involving community leaders, providing you better access to the means that you need when you get out, and proactively addressing the issue on the front end as well.
Mr. Henning?
This is a straight money issue, okay? That's the honest answer. If you look at a state like Michigan, they spend about $13 million a year on reentry services for inmates coming out. Ohio spends $66 million. The statistic Shannon mentioned, 90,000, that's what our Department of Corrections spends. Over the past 8 years, the number of people that are incarcerated in Massachusetts has declined about 25%, while the budget to incarcerate has gone up 21%. If you take the budgets and you look at the amount of money spent on funding for programs like program services, which is what you're talking about, reentry, behavioral health, it's been about 2% all the way across the board. That means every $100 spent in a facility like this, only $2 out of that 100 is used for the type of thing you're talking about. So your eyes go up and your eyebrows go up and you say, can that possibly be true? Yes, it's true. This is about a reallocation of resources to address just the type of thing you're talking about.
Mr. Cabral?
Thank you for that question, Ashley. I'm used to Ashley asking me questions. So my wife's name is Ashley. It's a very pretty name. Listen, what you heard.
There'll be no sucking up, Mr.
I have to do that all of that. Every time I hear someone named Ashley, it was to you. I
was kidding.
Okay, thank you. But listen, what you heard from the other candidates, there's two things. It's money, and it's essentially going to the budget going to Beacon Hill to get money from all that. And it takes relationships on Beacon Hill to get this done. I mean, the $3 million that Shannon just talked about, the bill that was put forth for more bed for community service reentry, that I was one of the key leaders of that. That's working with organizations within the community to make sure that we have more beds, particularly for people coming back in the community, particularly for women. One of the things I want to announce, in case some of you are familiar with, that I think will make you happy, particularly women that have children, is that going forward, before people are sent to jail, the judge will have to determine whether that person is a primary caregiver. So if you have children, whether you're a man or woman, if you have children, the judge has to consider an alternative to jail before they send you to jail if you have children. So I just wanted to plug that in because we're doing a lot of good work in Massachusetts, and I've been on the ground getting that done, and I'm looking forward to doing it as a district attorney. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Ashley. Question? Thank you. Question number 5 will be from Celestine Vincente. Did I get that right? Close enough?
My name is Celestino Vicente. I would like to personally take this time to thank the ACLU for always standing with the underserved and underprivileged, and everyone else who took the time out of their day today. That being said, how close are you willing to work with the ACLU and other community organizations to bridge the divide between law enforcement and the communities they serve to combat the rampant social injustices that plague my community and so many others? Do you have any initiatives planned to do that?
Starting with Mr. Henning.
Yes. Thank you very much for your question. About once a month and sometimes on a more regular basis, I come to this room when it used to be filled with tables, and I do the Boston Reentry Initiative. And the organizations there, like YOU, Youth Opportunities Unlimited, Whittier Street Health Clinic, and other partners of the reentry program are vital and essential partners in that process. Every community organization that is willing to help, I would be happy to participate in and to work with. And it's something I've been doing as the chief of the gang unit by breaking down cases and reviewing cases by looking at the background of individuals while also working with community organizations that are connected to that individual. I would absolutely continue to do that. I also think it's important for us to reach out to other organizations like ROCA, like Year Up, and other community partners that want to and are willing to work with us so that we are collectively supporting people that are either about to be or potentially could be involved in the criminal justice system. One of the things I did on the campaign trail is I took a day off in April to pick up a young man that I had worked with named Dominic. I had to bring him to the place to get his probation application in.
Thank you, Mr. Henning. I know that was not easy. If you want, we can take a vote to see how many people want to know what happened with Donovan. No, I'm kidding. I was just teasing. Mr. Maloney.
The answer to your question is yes, I would absolutely work with the ACLU, and I would hope to garner their support despite the fact that I'm independent and not aligned with any party. Really what it comes down to is ultimately transparency, everything above boards. What are the statistics in regards to who have we incarcerated? What are the statistics as to who have we charged? What is there, everything, literally everything is 100% transparent. There's no hiding anything. Ultimately, let me back off. In regards to initiatives, harm reduction sites and alternative justice techniques. Harm reduction sites would be the biggest initiative that I would hope to have the ACLU support implementing.
Ms. Rollins.
So I have worked with the ACLU as a lawyer when I was a baby lawyer, and I've worked with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. I've worked with Greater Boston Legal Services with respect to social injustices. As I said earlier, I've been a prosecutor, a criminal defense attorney. I was a baby lawyer with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights when we sued the Boston Police Department claiming race discrimination against police officers. And so I've worked with MAMLEO, the Mass Association of Minority Law Enforcement Officers. I'm proud to say I volunteer with the NAACP, the chair of their legal defense fund, so I receive calls from the community and assist there. When I was a federal prosecutor, I worked with the CARE and the Restart programs, which are similar to what Mr. Henning is talking about, some of the things that he does here. So this is a long-standing area that I've been involved in, and I'm excited to continue working with these organizations that I've worked with for a very long time.
Ms. Champion? The answer to your question is yes. I will work with anyone and everyone who will help me address the issues that are of concern, which is that we are prosecuting people, but we are not prosecuting the conditions that exist in our society that are causing people to commit crimes. We need to look at how we're going to combat jobs, education, and housing, and I'm willing to work with anyone who will help us in that endeavor. One of the things that the community can do right now is with the Mass Registry of Motor Vehicles, is upon release from incarceration, they need to provide every single person automatically with a mass identification card so that they can start the process of rebuilding their life. But anyone and everyone who can help us towards improving the quality of life for people and crime prevention, that's who I'm willing to work with.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Yes, of course I'd work with the ACLU, but I think this is even to go beyond that, right? We have a system that we all know relentlessly goes after people to prosecute. And I was fortunate enough to be a defense attorney, but also to be the director of ROCA, and we relentlessly went after people to help them change and to give them exactly what they needed and to meet them where they're at. And this is, again, about actually rolling up our sleeves and doing the hard work to do anything and everything we can to make sure that people who are getting out don't fail. And that's exactly what my lane has been, and that's what we simply need more of in this system. And unless we do that, we will still see the racial disparity. We will still see mostly black, brown, and poor people who are in jail. And this is what it's going to take, is really a different lens and understanding that we are all better when everybody can participate in our society, and that's what we need to get to.
Mr. Cabral.
I too have worked with the ACLU. In fact, some of the bills that we talked about today, eliminating mandatory minimum juvenile justice, is on their website, and they're strongly push for some of these changes, and work on a lot of the other things, including trying to eliminate racial disparities within police stops and other things. I look forward to continuing to work with them. But this discussion reminds me of something I've been saying lately, which is the DA's office needs to transcend itself. It needs to be beyond just waiting in the courtroom, waiting in the hill to make sure once you get a case, you prosecute a face and a number, right? People exist, people live in our communities, and are traumatized with what's going on. So what we need to do more of is make sure that we bring the DA to the community. I'll mention one example. We got 10 seconds, so I won't do that. But
taking a page from Mr. Henning, good for you, Mr.
Yeah,
Cabral.
thank you. I will.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. Celestino Vicente. Question number 6 was originally written by Yuet Chow, and helping her by posing the question is going to be Taekwondo Tyson.
Should non-documented women be deported if they are convicted of a non-violent crime?
We're going to start first with Ms. McAuliffe.
No. We can end it there. But I think what we need to do is actually have a district attorney who is going to take into consideration what the consequences are of a conviction and ensure that there isn't some unintended horrific consequence. So I started my career as a federal defender in San Diego, and that means that I represented mostly people who are undocumented coming in from Mexico. I've never been part of a prosecution system that has deported anybody. I haven't been part of a prosecution system that has had unintended consequences or been unable to budge and required convictions that they knew would end up in an unintended and unmerited or not merited deportation. So I believe we need to look at this very seriously, and it's no longer should we actually be doing the bidding for Trump's racist policies, but really be our very own county and do what we do to keep our people strong.
Mr. Maloney?
Immigration is obviously a very hot topic right now. Let me say I've been practicing criminal defense, never been a prosecutor, but practicing as a criminal defense attorney for 10 years. And without fail, every single time I have a client that is facing potential immigration consequences on the back end, I review that with them in detail, over and over and over again. The job as a district attorney of Suffolk County is to protect the people, to protect the county. And it's not the job of the prosecutor to entertain or consider the immigration consequences that they may face on the back end. I say that I understand what's going on the southern border. I think AG Sessions is one of the worst attorney generals that this country has ever had. That said, the job as a district attorney is to protect Boston and the surrounding communities, not deal with the potential consequences on the back end.
The font on this, I'm just saying, okay?
Put your glasses on.
I know, but then I have to take them off. Okay. Mr. Carvalho.
Immigrants in our community need protection just as much as anyone else. And this, again, goes back to what I was saying in the beginning, which is, who I represent, who I am, my personal experiences, and my professional experiences embody who needs to be the next district attorney. I was born in Cape Verde, came here 15 years old. I've dealt with, as a state rep, I've dealt with people coming to my office scared to go to their appointments with ICE because they may be held. So I understand these issues in terms of what needs to happen. And one of the things that I commit to doing as the next DA is to make sure that all ADAs, any of the staff, are trained on collateral consequences of convictions, particularly immigration potential devastating consequences. As I mentioned earlier, one of my friends was deported to Cape Verde and shot in the head. It's a close friend I grew up with. So to me, these decision making, it's not policies, it's the embodiment, because I live in it. Thank you.
Ms. Campion?
The answer to your question is no. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My mother lives in this country alone with not one single family member. And what we have to do is make sure that we are creating an environment, if we're going to truly be a sanctuary city, that we are creating environments where undocumented citizens or residents feel safe to come forward. My mother lived for a number of years in a serious domestic violence situation because she was afraid to come forward and didn't really quite understand what her rights or remedies would be. And so it's important that for those residents who are living here, a lot of people come to this country seeking a better life for themselves and their children. There's nothing a mother wouldn't do for her child to have a better life, and we need to make sure that we are creating safe environments for them to come forward. For those women who are incarcerated, we need to make sure that they are not punished a second time with the threat of any sort of deportation actions.
Mr. Henning?
A country's deportation policy or immigration policy shouldn't victimize people, and that's what it's doing right now. It's what people have been seeing in the news over the past few weeks, and it's shocking that that's coming from the leader of our country. In Massachusetts, prosecutors should be protecting people in the community regardless of where they come from. And that's an essential thing that I've done as a prosecutor, and it's something I will continue to do if I'm the district attorney. Programs like deportation or arresting people at the courthouse steps make us unsafe because it makes victims less likely to come forward and talk about what happened to them. It makes witnesses less likely to come forward and talk about the violent crimes that they've seen. And it shouldn't be our job to enforce Donald Trump's immigration policy.
Ms. Robin?
True comment. Undocumented, nonviolent individuals, absolutely not to be deported. I'm the daughter of a first generation and second generation parents that came to this country. I know firsthand what it feels like to be surrounded by family members that came here and were afraid. What I think we need to work on is making sure that the communities know that there's a district attorney that's going to fight. I've said many, many times, if there is an ADA, an assistant district attorney that sees ICE or any federal agent in any of the courthouses in Suffolk County, they will have my number, they will call me. There will be an injunction of some sort filed. We will get back that person because that does not keep Suffolk County safe. We love saying out loud, crime is down in Suffolk County. If it's down because people are terrified to come forward and report crimes because they're afraid of being deported, we don't get credit for that.
Thank you. Did we draft you or did you volunteer to give the question?
Volunteer.
Thank you for volunteering to help. You helped Ms. Chow out by giving it. Thank you. Question number 7 will be asked by Vincent Weeks.
If elected, will you hold police officers accountable for their actions? What change can you bring to help the youth in the city?
We're going to start with Mr. Carvalho. Did you understand the question? Okay. Can you repeat the question, Mr. Weeks?
If elected, would you hold police officers accountable for their actions? And then what changes can you bring to help the youth in the city?
I'll start by saying absolutely, Mr. Weeks. That's in terms of the law enforcement community in the country right now. That is a critical issue in terms of making sure that we hold each other, not only police but DAs, and what happens in jails like this. Accountability is critical, and that's not happening enough. And again, I keep going back to my record as a state representative. One of the first thing I did in 2014 was to file a bill to say that when police kill someone in Massachusetts, that a special prosecutor is appointed to handle those cases. So the local DA who's received to work with the police on a daily basis does not handle it. So this is at the height of Michael Brown and some of the cases that we saw nationwide. In terms of the youth, one of the things that we have to do more of is make sure that we have pre-arraignment diversion for youth, whether they're juveniles or young adults, to make sure that when you make those first 2-3 mistakes that we
Mr.
give them a time out.
Thank you, Vincent. If I'm elected, I will absolutely hold police accountable. involved in investigating and prosecuting law enforcement officers before. Part of my job now is to tell police no, to tell them when they're making a mistake, to tell them when they're doing it wrong. And I will absolutely continue to do that if elected. As for youth programs, this is what excites me about what our role can eventually be, because I've been working in this type of stuff for the past 8 years in my personal life and my professional life. From coaching in schools and mentoring to doing diversion programs myself and in the workplace. I believe this is essential to the role that we play. So the juvenile alternative resolution program that we have in our office, I would continue to expand that, which is essentially a pre-trial diversion program where we're working with UMass Boston in order to identify high-risk people for that. In addition, I'm going to be rolling out my own plan that I've been calling LEAD, Law Enforcement Early Diversion. And that's going to be pairing law enforcement officers from the district attorney's office with people referred to us from schools and other programs where they are potentially on the cusp and they could be led down the wrong path. And the program can do 2 things. Number 1, mentoring is essential, but number 2, it helps rebuild trust in law enforcement in the community.
Mr. Maloney?
So the overwhelming majority of law enforcement are good people. There are bad apples just like any other industry, any other corporation, any other company. When police officers are afoul of the law, we need a special prosecutor from outside the county, someone that doesn't know the individuals, someone that doesn't know the clerks, that doesn't know the judges, that doesn't know the prosecutors. We need a special prosecutor from outside of Suffolk County itself. I also strongly support body cameras, and I know there's a financing issue that goes along with that, but number 1, to protect police officers, but number 2, to ensure that the truth comes out. In regards to changes that could be implemented, again, I've made it abundantly clear I am in full support of criminal justice reform. Any and every diversionary technique that we can implement to have an upstanding member of society not go through the ringer into the system, I fully support. So I would expand on the ones that are already in place.
Ms. Rollins?
Absolutely, I will hold police officers accountable. I have, in my roles as the Chief Legal Counsel of Massport and the General Counsel of Mascot&T, I've worked with police. There's the MBTA police, there's state police at Massport, in other words, so I have good relationships with police, but I've also, with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, as I've said earlier, been a lawyer that filed a lawsuit against the Boston police when they were not acting appropriately. I have a proven record of doing that for civil rights and violations or racial discrimination. With respect to the youth in the city, we need jobs. We need jobs for these children. I don't want to hear about playing basketball with little black and brown kids or getting us ice cream. I love basketball and ice cream. They're wonderful. We need jobs, and we need to give our children the same opportunities that other children get, and we don't do that. We don't get those benefits at all. I want to utilize money that we have from the DA's office and help assist that.
Ms. Champion?
Yes, I believe in holding police officers accountable. I have worked on cases as well with internal affairs. The issue with respect to children and how we can help them, I believe Chief Keys out in Chelsea has this great program called Chelsea Hub, which basically talks about how to identify candidates within the school system who may find themselves in a pipeline to jail and redirecting them, working with them one-on-one and keeping track of them from the time they're identified till the time they're successfully out of high school and into college. The other thing that I think we need to do is use the human capital of the district attorney's office to reinvest in our own community that we're serving and making sure that we try to get the docket clear of petty nonviolent offenses so we can use the people in the office to give back time with respect to community service hours. It's very important that children in the community don't see law enforcement for the first time in an adverse, negative way, and that they see us as partners.
Ms. McAuliffe?
So yes, I will hold police officers accountable. We actually live in a country where police kill 1,000 people a year for the past 10 years. Out of that, there have been 54 charges total, and half of those have been dismissed or people have been found not guilty. So we're doing a very good job in actually keeping police officers accountable. What I can tell you as a defense attorney, I've always held police officers accountable. It's called getting on the stand and cross-examination. And what we need to do in the DA's office is actually spend money on holding police officers accountable and not on a fourth trial for somebody like Sean Ellis that's supposed to be happening in the fall, when we know that the police officers involved in that case are actually have been convicted in federal court of doing something that were incredibly illegal. So it's about using our resources. And with regard to Massport and their Troop E, who have been in the paper at all times, there's been massive waste there, and they need to be held accountable. Sorry, it's Troop F.
Thank you very much for your questions, Louise. Question number 8 will be asked by Jody Horton.
Currently, the only medication-assisted treatment available in the House of Corrections is Vivitrol. Due to the opioid epidemic in this county and the percentage of addicts in the criminal justice system, do you feel that providing other forms of MAT, such as methadone and Suboxone, that are currently offered in other states would be appropriate inside this system?
Starting with Mr. Maloney.
I want to make sure I understand your question correctly. Your question is, would other types of medication be appropriate in the House of Correction itself? Is that accurate? Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I've been practicing for 10 years. I believe I've been to every prison, House of Correction, jail in the state more times than I can possibly count. I've interviewed clients right across the hall. I get it. I realize when someone's taken in, when they're taken into custody, they're walking in court, they're taken into custody, they may have a litany, and it doesn't not just methadone. I mean, the medication issue is totally awry. Listen, I understand the issue. I fully support it. I think there's a lot of opportunity to provide inmates with additional medication or additional rights and resources. But ultimately, that's going to be a problem that has to be utilized in the larger microphone in the DA's office to work with legislature. I'll do just that.
Ms. Champion?
I would agree to using alternatives, but I would also ask that they include other types of alternatives like therapeutic, holistic medications, treatments, looking to see whether or not cannabis oils can help with some of the research that it is stated in terms of helping the brain heal and regenerate the nerves within the brain, right? So I think that if you're struggling with a drug addiction and you're trying to get healthy again, there's a lot of things you need in terms of holistic medicine, maybe plant-based medicines, massages, therapy. So I just think that we need to really look at the person and take a more human, individualized approach to getting people healthy again.
Ms. McAuliffe?
So yes, I agree with additional treatments, and I think what's really been proven to work is not just Vivitrol or Suboxone or something of the like, but it actually has to be coupled with therapy. Because it's not, we all want a magic pill. Wouldn't that be awesome if we could take a magic pill and just be better? But really what we need to deal with is what's underneath. What is the root? What is causing us to want to dull our pain and want to escape? And all the research shows that you need to actually couple those treatments with actual therapy to get back to the root, and I think that that's what we should be doing in our facilities. What I can also tell you is that the VA in Maine is doing some incredible things with what Linda was talking about additional alternative therapies like ablative therapy, things that cut off pain if that's what's actually causing some of the addiction, but meditation and pool therapy. I don't know if we can do all of this in the House of Correction, and probably not, right? But this is about looking to do anything and everything we can to make sure that people don't fail and don't die when they get out.
Ms. Rollins?
Yes.
Mr. Carvalho?
Absolutely. I think, in a place like this, I think $100 million of budget and approximately 5% spent on education programs, services. That's included, including treatment. And, we need to do better. We need to make sure that people that come to jails and prisons, they get the treatment that they deserve, particularly, as you mentioned, medical assisted treatment. I remember one story, gut-wrenching story that I heard from Jared, who works for Moore, which does recovery work in Massachusetts. He talked about a friend of his who came to this facility and was on medical assisted. I think he was on methadone and came here for 30 days. Of course, got cold, got off the stuff, and then went back to the streets and immediately OD'd, right? Because again, once you stop taking treatment, then you go back to the street and take drugs, and that's probably, as we know what's going on with stuff that's synthetic, and mix of different ways
Time.
to deep itself.
Mr. Henning.
Jody, as I mentioned earlier, talking about the way that resources are allocated here, everything needs to be reallocated if we're going to focus on treatment and prevention. And simply making something available, unfortunately, isn't going to do it if the day that you leave this facility, there's not a treatment plan that continues. For instance, if you were to begin Suboxone, if there's not a treatment plan in place, if you don't have your Mass Health, if you don't have your ID card, as Linda was talking about, sending you out the door when you've been using Suboxone or methadone is dangerous for you. So what I think needs to happen is, if we're going to take it seriously, pass a criminal justice reform bill and make it the focus, make eliminating recidivism the focus of our attention, we should be funding programs that do just what you're talking about, which make people healthy, but also can effectively, for long-term prospects, and get them off of whatever substance they're addicted to. Right now, the criminal justice reform bill that was passed doesn't fund many of the programs that we would need in order to get people off of illegal substances. And that's something I hope that the legislature picks up the next time around in order to address what you're talking about. Thank you for the question, Jody.
Thank you, Ms. Horton. Question number 9 will be asked by Jeffrey, is it LeBate or LeBack? LeBack.
To my knowledge, bail is set to give a person a chance to go back and forth to court, not hold and put their life on pause. My question is, what are you going to do to combat the high bails that are given to people that can't afford it?
We're going to start with Mr. Maloney.
That's an excellent question. I think we've talked about this briefly, or at least alluded to it earlier. Oftentimes, bail is, for clarity, bail, the only purpose of bail is to ensure that an individual comes back and complies with the court order, essentially come back to court. Oftentimes, though, if you have an individual with low means or very little means, $100 bail or $1,000. Listen, when I was first doing appointed cases all day, every day, I had clients that would go in and visit that were incarcerated that were held on $250. And they were held for 3, 4, or 5 months. As district attorney, I can tell you that I said, bail, we can't make bail go away. Bail is necessary. But taking into consideration the financial needs of the individual and their ability to pay, listen, all day long, I absolutely support it. And I think this brings up another, I have a little bit of time here, so I'm going to briefly allude to this. What I see prosecutors often doing now is finding a way to bypass the system and find a creative backdoor via something called a 58A. And what that means is, if, hey, we realize that bail, we're not going to be able to hold this person with bail and put ourselves in a better situation. Dangerousness hearings will only be used when they're the least restrictive means available.
Mr. Henning, would you advise Mr. Maloney as to what happens when I say time and he doesn't stop?
I stopped right away. I'm still waiting to hear what happened now.
Maybe you can follow up out in the, we'll let you follow up out in the hallway.
So, Jeffrey, number 1, instructing prosecutors to ask for bail only in cases where, down the line, a jail sentence is going to be appropriate, or a sentence of any sort of incarceration is going to be appropriate. Because that's one of the initial steps, is assessing the case. Because you're absolutely right, the purpose of bail is to ensure a person's appearance at trial. The second thing is, the decision from the Supreme Judicial Court last year, and now the Criminal Justice Reform Bill, require that a judge and the members of the court, including the prosecutors and the defense, take into account the background, the assets, the financial abilities of individuals. And I think if you are in court these days, you see that that becomes much more prevalent than it may have 2 or 3 years ago. The third thing is, I have seen that the bail review process in our court system is usually adversarial, meaning a defense attorney files paperwork, they go in front of the judge and we argue about it. I think it's totally appropriate, and I've done it as a prosecutor, and I would instruct other prosecutors to talk with the defense attorney before going into court and fighting it out, because we often work together on other parts of the case to resolve discovery disputes, to try the resolution of the case. We can do that on bail before we get to court.
I see you, Mr. Henning. Ms. Champion.
So just following up on what Greg said, the purpose of bail is simply just to ensure a person's return. And we need to really take an individualized approach to this. As a prosecutor, I can see it in different ways. In speaking with returning citizens from the community, in things like GPS monitoring devices, for example, while a prosecutor may say, oh, that's a great way to know where you are and ensure your return, it's also a great way for the people who are looking for you to know where you're going to be at a particular time, which could cause harm to you. So for me, it's just to make sure that someone returns. We have to individualize that process, and we do have to have communication and conversations with the defense bar, and I don't think that that conversation should happen at the time of bail review. I think it has to happen prior to arraignment, and we need to be given the facts and the information that we need to make a decision, the appropriate decision as a prosecutor for the person who is appearing before the court.
Ms. McAuliffe?
So I think it's great that we have all these prosecutors here today who've been in Suffolk County who have these newfound ideas about bail, but what I can tell you is from being a public defender for 12 years, I've worked in this county with these prosecutors and in a system where people come in and ask for very high bails. When they know that they're not going to be asking for time in the end, they know the person is poor and can't afford it, and they know what's going to happen is this is de facto going to keep this person in jail. And what that does is it allows, again, to stack up the odds against people. So this is where the different lens is really important. As a public defender, I knew that that bail hearing was one of the most important points in a case, because if you walk out of court, your likelihood of either beating the case, exercising your rights, or just being able to do things that will make you strong to redeem yourself and to show people what you can do is so important, because it can change the trajectory of a case and a life. So no bail in misdemeanors, nonviolent felonies, or where we aren't actually looking for jail time.
Mr. Cabral?
Well, this report, one of the things that it highlights here, again, is that from 2009 to 2013, close to approximately 80% of the people that came through the Sheriff's Department were held pre-trial, which means that all folks that have been convicted are accepting responsibility for anything, right? So that means often not communities is bail. So as a prosecutor, I saw it, particularly in Roxbury, poor people come every day, whether it's $100, $50, $200, I couldn't afford it, which is why, again, I became a lawmaker, and I'm proud to say that I support ending cash bail, period. And as Massachusetts right now, as someone alluded to, we're going in the right direction, which is at minimum requiring judges to make sure someone can afford a particular bill before they institute a bail. Finally, one of the things that I will make sure to do as the next district attorney is make sure that ADAs do not ask for bail for misdemeanors and non-violent offenses.
Ms. Rollins?
New Jersey and Maryland right now have done what the state representative is alluding to, and I similarly do not agree with cash bail. The case that everyone's talking about, the Brangman decision, which is codified in the new criminal justice reform bill, was drafted by the first black woman who was ever appointed to the Supreme Judicial Court, Justice Geraldine Hines, who has written 2 of the 4 major opinions that changed a lot of, were really made massive changes in criminal justice reform. I'm happy to say that Justice Hines is supporting me and endorsing me in this race. I think we need to change this office. We look at the drug lab scandals that have happened, 2 enormous drug lab scandals, that but for the ACLU and CPCS filing lawsuits, we would not be having all of those dismissed cases happening. We need a DA that's going to self-report if there's a problem and make changes without being forced to.
Thank you very much, Mr. LeBath, for your question. Question 10 will be asked by Edith Otero.
Good morning. My name is Edith Otero. Knowing that failure to pay court fees is a violation, why is it that the courts put so many different fees on probation and parole candidates who are mainly indigent?
And this will go first to Ms. Rollins again.
Yes, when I sit in court and see that the first question out of a judge's mouth is always, have you paid your fees? When are you going to be able to pay those? If somebody is declared indigent and is eligible for a public defender, a CPCS lawyer on the federal side, a federal defender, I believe that the fees and fines should also be waived. I know there's going to be a lot of pushback to that from different organizations. You mentioned probation and the court system, and we're a part in that process. But I am a strong proponent and have been speaking to public defenders about saying if you're indigent, you're truly indigent. We can't say you can't afford a lawyer, but here's the $150 you have to pay for your lawyer and all the other fines and fees. I'd be advocating to waive those.
Ms. McAuliffe?
So the answer is to the why is because it's a machine and the system wants to constantly feed the machine. What I've seen as a public defender and as a director at ROCA is people who are in court who don't have any money and going back to court over and over and over again on probation violations, saying, haven't you paid your fee, haven't you paid your fee? And it defies reason completely because it costs so much money to get people in court to hold this hearing. And what we need to do is we need to stop the insanity. We need to say that this isn't working. You can't ask for money from people who don't have it to feed their children, to pay their rent, to then pay some court fee. So I'm a huge proponent in no court fees for people who are indigent. It doesn't make any sense. And we should start looking to defendants who actually have a lot of money, who are committing the business crimes, who are making a lot of money on it, and find the people who actually have it to feed the system if that's what we need to do. But it should not be on the backs of poor people because you have more important things in the system.
Mr. Henning.
Thank you for the question, Edith. The probation supervision fees and those other fees you're talking about are essentially designed to pay for the court system. I think a lot of them are burdensome, like you're talking about, and Shannon was just talking about some of them, but one of the young men I work with, Anthony, posed it to me this way: do you want me to rob somebody in order to pay my fees, or do you want me to not pay the fee? That's their choice. And that's a difficult, if not impossible choice. It's terrible that that's what people face. There are some fees that are in the system, though, that the court imposes because it involves a victim. So there's a victim witness fee that's imposed on cases involving victims. Those funds go toward the often forgotten people, and it's something we haven't really done much discussion of, but victims in cases where they are victimized have services that they apply for through the state, and that's something that is still important. And even if it takes months or years later, after a person on probation gets a job, or through community service, which is a resolution, an alternative that people can sometimes use, victim witness fees are an important way for victims in some ways to be made whole when they become victimized.
Mr. Carvalho?
You know, again, I'm proud to say that in Massachusetts, going forward, a lot of these things are changing. And I'll make a couple notes in terms of fines and fees. New law that I'm proud to have been involved in. Just three things with regards to fees. One, people will not be sent to jail if simply they can't afford their fees, right? So if you can show that you have substantial financial hardship, the judge cannot send you to jail. The other thing is when folks are released from prison of their parole, we give you a grace period of 1 year before you have to pay for those fees. Same thing with probation. The first 6 months of probation, you won't have to pay for the fees. So, a lot of things are happen going forward to make sure that, again, we're not just locking people up, we're not criminalizing our poor. And again, I'm proud to be a district attorney, a potential district attorney who's been involved in making progressive change in Massachusetts, and looking forward to continuing to implement these things and be more creative.
Time. Mr. Maloney.
Thank you for your question. The Committee for Public Counsel Services is the entity that manages and oversees all indigent defense in the state of Massachusetts. Every county across the board. It's actually an incredible program and does a really good, not sometimes issues, but overall as a structure, it's a well-governed entity. That said, when an indigent client is appointed to an attorney, which serves as an independent contractor with the state, they are assessed at $150. 9 times out of 10, it's a $150 fine by the state. It goes as high as sometimes $500. That defendant has the ability to pay that fee via community service. I don't know what the going rate is, but I think it's between $13 and $14 an hour. Very few people actually know about that option. Very few people know about that option, and depending on the courthouse that you're in, dictates how much that is actually made available to individuals. I strongly support community service options in addition to court-assessed fees, for victim witness fees, etc. Anything but restitution.
Ms. Champion.
So I don't think that we should, once someone has served their time and they're released, there's already plenty of obstacles and there are going to be some hardships that they're facing. It adds just one more barrier to their ability to succeed if we're imposing additional penalties and fines and fees. It's not just with probation that you would suffer, it's even getting your driver's license back, and they'll say you can't get it because you have outstanding child support or you have outstanding obligations, fines, fees, and penalties. If we're truly going to get people back working, if we're truly going to end recidivism, then we have to make sure we get people to a place where they can start to rebuild their life. And the only way to do that is to make sure that they start with a fresh start. And they're truly given that second chance. But I am open to deferring it. I am open, if in cases of restitution, to making sure that victims do have restitution. Our job is to make the streets safe, to prevent crime, and in order to do that, we got to get people back to work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Otero, for your question. The final question from the assembled registered voters will come from Michael Murphy.
What is your plan to turn the corner on the opioid epidemic? Do you feel diversion programs are the way out, or do you feel as though you can punch addicts out of it?
We're going to start with Ms. Champion.
You cannot punish addicts out of it. It is inhumane to force detox on an individual who is, one, not ready for detox. You have to make sure that we're addressing and dealing with the underlying mental health issues. We have to make sure that we are creating opportunities through diversion programs to leave a person struggling with a substance abuse better off than the way we found them, but that process cannot be done by force. It's just the community working together, helping each other. It's a serious issue, and one of the things we have to understand is that now it's come to the forefront because the face of that addiction has changed. But nonetheless, whether it's black or white, we still have to address it, deal with it, and really get people healthy again.
Ms. Rollins?
So you can absolutely not punish your way to a solution, but I will tell you that family members of addicted people, there are lots of different reactions to this. I'm a mother of a 14-year-old daughter, but I have two of my nieces as a result of the opioid crisis. I know firsthand what it's like to have DCF in your life, to have a sibling that is incarcerated as a result of her addiction and other choices. So we need strong support systems to help, because this is a complicated problem. But I also need you to hear, sir, that there are family members that are struggling as well and picking up the pieces while everyone else is hurting. When I go to Winthrop and see people that are in their 70s with children that are 4 years old because their children or grandchildren's, are struggling with addiction, and they're watching these kids, it's a very big problem. It's touching lots of different people, and I told you this morning I was late because my first cousin just overdosed and died. So we need to do something immediately.
Ms. McAuliffe.
So, jail obviously doesn't cure addiction, and certainly nobody chooses this at all. So what we've seen before is the war on drugs, which simply fails to deter crime, wastes billions of dollars, and has an enormous human cost to people in our communities. So it's really about doing anything and everything we can to get people to the things that will make them strong and will help them in their recovery. And also understanding that part of recovery is relapse and stumbles and falls. And actually having systems that are going to help pick people up and get them back on track really, really quickly. We expect perfection oftentimes from people in the system that we don't expect from our very own children. Understanding that stumbling and falling is just part of this. There's also something called police-assisted diversion, when people are seeing people with a small amount of drugs or a small drug transaction and bringing somebody to actually a community service provider where they can have a touch with the system that might help later down the line if they actually want to go to recovery.
Mr. Carvalho.
This is an issue, obviously, that is dear to all our hearts. We all had someone in our family who's dealing with addiction. I personally have visited this facility, a brother of mine who has been in and out of jail for time and time again. At least 10 years dealing with addiction, so I understand what's going on. But again, this is another thing that I have to keep talking about what we're doing in the state, what we have going on. One of the things that the new budget is intended to do in the House particularly is to put $5 million for substance abuse diversion, $2.5 million for expansion of drug court. So that's to be sure that again that we're not locking people up, that we're making sure people that are dealing with addiction are getting second chances, they're being diverted from the system, even pre-arraignment. One of the things that I will be doing as district attorney is create a new position, senior level position called Chief of Diversion and Restorative Justice to make sure that we keep implementing and pushing forward to make sure we're not locking people up, and getting people up. Thank you.
Mr. Maloney?
Thank you for your question, sir. Number one, harm reduction zones, needle exchange program. When people are asking for help, they get help. They don't get incarcerated. You cannot incarcerate your way out of this problem. Number two, we do not penalize people that test positive for THC while they're trying to break the vice grip of addiction from heroin, opioids, or any other. THC is an exit drug, and we would simply not incarcerate them. I also talked briefly about this. We're talking about alternative wellness. I own a company called CBD Thera, which is a cannabis, which is a hemp extract. CBD now is actually being used to treat addiction. And actually, the state of Pennsylvania just recently implemented THC and CBD to actually treat addiction, to break the epidemic. As I feel incredibly passionate about this. We're not going to incarcerate our way out. We're going to provide available options, and we're not going to penalize people for fighting and finding a creative way to break that addiction.
Mr. Murphy, thank you very much for your question. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Henning, I deeply apologize. Tell us about Derek.
Michael, Dominic,
I'm sorry.
So Michael, to answer your first question, no, we can't punish people and get our way out of it by punishing people through the court system for addiction. There are programs that are in place that can be expanded upon, and it's for at least 2 or 3 other questions we talked about, that the budgeting and the allocation of resources for correctional facilities and for law enforcement should be reallocated. There should be a way to have beds available rather than getting in a fight with another jurisdiction about whether or not we should build the bridge. We should be able to reallocate resources so we have funding available for beds and for treatment facilities. The district attorney's office now has something called Road to Recovery. It's a program I would expand to all other courts in our county. It works with the Gavin Foundation, which has a proven track record. There is a small component, however, of enforcement, not for people that are addicted to substances, but for people who line their pockets by doing things like trafficking fentanyl. And having people who are trained law enforcement investigators with experience knowing how to investigate and prosecute crimes means keeping products like that are straight up poison out of the community so that it's not preying on people that are addicted to opioids.
Now, Mr. Murphy, thank you very much for your question. This last question was actually written by Christopher Sinatra, who was unable to be with us today. I modified it ever so slightly. Given the pharmaceutical costs that have been made healthcare and the rising geriatric state prison population, would you support the use of medical marijuana in jails, houses of correction, and prisons? Starting first with, we'll just go right to left, starting first with Mr. Carvalho.
Yes.
Ms. Rollins?
Is it yes or no?
No, I mean, you have a minute.
Yes.
Mr. Henning?
No, I think in a situation like this, particularly difficulties that people face in a correctional facility, introducing something that can be used as a product to trade or sell, if it's not done under some sort of medical supervision, is not a good idea. If somebody was talking about doing it similar to the question that I think Jody had asked about using it as potentially a medical process rather than something that's available in a more open way to individuals, that's something that could be considered, but I wouldn't want it available without some sort of regulation like that.
Right, I think the question was medical, so it would have to be. Yes. Ms. McAuliffe?
So, yeah, this is actually not something I thought about before, but I think that if it is in medical use with a dosage, that sure, I mean, why shouldn't it be used in a house of correction? But I do think it would have to be something that would be regulated. I mean, we don't have cigarettes anymore in the House of Correction or in any type of facility. So I guess if it wouldn't interfere with other parts of the safety, sure. But I would probably actually want to think about it a little bit more and talk to the sheriff about that and see what he thinks.
Mr. Maloney?
I want to talk to the sheriff a lot more about it. I built Canacare dogs from the ground up after Article 12 passed. I feel very, very passionately about it. I started CBD therapy. I employ currently over a dozen addicts who have broken the vice grip. I get it. It is an exit drug. I would wholeheartedly welcome conversation with it under a medical setting with a medical recommendation, which, by the way, it's how you bypass the federal prohibition. You receive a medical evaluation from a doctor that the benefits of medical cannabis outweigh the potential side effects. And let me tell you, if you're comparing medical cannabis to heroin, to opioid, to anything with a needle, all day long, it is a safer alternative, and it is one that I would wholeheartedly encourage sheriffs to implement, and I would work hand in hand with them to effectuate that.
Ms. Champion?
Yes, and I think that what they keep talking about is addressing the use of cannabis in a way that creates some sort of drug-type use. I think there's ways to extract the oils from the plant to help people in a therapeutic way to actually heal them and to help them with the side effects of withdrawals and detox.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question and answer portion of the debate is now concluded. I want to thank our questioners for participating, for writing your questions, for showing up today. Do not believe that government is something that just impacts you. Government isn't something that happens to you, you're a part of it. You have a voice. You're all registered voters. I hope that you use it in this election, that you used it in past elections, and that you will continue to use it for every election. Who we put in office matters. They make decisions about our lives every single day. So thank you, both of you, both groups, for being here. Thank you for your questions. Before we move to the closing statements, I'm just going to invite the service providers that I referred to earlier up to the podium. I want you to give a very quick introduction of yourselves and no more than 90 seconds. If you can do it in 60, we'll all give you a hand overview of your agency and the services it provides here at the Sheriff's Office. Let's go to the microphone further. Yes, the timekeepers are still keeping time.
All right, 60 seconds. Hello, my name is Kevin Sibley. I am from the Mayor's Office of Returning Citizens. Restore, rebuild, and reconnect. That's what we do. The Office of Returning Citizens works with over 75 organizations within the city of Boston. Amazing programs like Project Place. We also work with Strive to connect you with the proper services that you need. You are not alone. And yes, you are a returning citizen. That means you have the right to vote and you have the right to live life as you did prior to. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Suzanne Kenny, Executive Director of Project Place, but my colleague Beth Carter in the back does all the heavy lifting. She is our Director of Reentry and Workforce Development. So we are a community-based organization. We work with men and women who have been on the street. 54% of them are returning citizens. We provide folks with the skills they need to get employment. We believe that our job is helping you get a job. But it's not just about getting a job. People's lives have been in crisis and they need stabilization services. And I just want to let you know that we will stick with you for the next 2 years. Even if you think we're going to haunt you, we really are going to love you for the next 2 years. And it starts with a partnership right here in the House of Correction. And thanks to both these sheriffs, Sheriff Tompkins and Sheriff Cabral, that's where our partnership started 15 years ago.
Hi everyone, my name is Yotan Zira. I'm from Roca. I'm here with my colleague Carmen Ronda, who's the Director of the Boston Program. We have the privilege of working with hundreds of young people who are at very high risk of being in facilities like this for years and years. And we believe they all matter, we believe they all belong, and we don't want to leave anyone out. And we go to them again and again and again and provide services to make sure that they can be their awesome selves and succeed and build education, employment, and other skills to be really great. DAs have a lot of impact on their lives, and I really want to applaud all the candidates for stepping up and doing great things. And we hope you all will all consider young people when you do your important job. I want to thank the sheriff for the partnership with you, which is great, and the ACLU for hosting all of this. So thank you.
Hello, I'm Amanda Reichmuth. I work at Respond. We're a domestic violence agency, and we work with all survivors of domestic violence, regardless of their gender, of their sexual orientation. And our particular role here at the Suffolk House of Correction, we provide a support group to the women who are in custody who domestic violence has impacted their lives. Some of them have come here because of the effects of domestic violence, or otherwise suffered through domestic violence prior to coming here. And we work with them through support group as well as through one-on-one case management, which is ever more in need. And so we're always working on expanding that work with them here. And then in the broader community, we have our hotline, we have shelter, and we have community-based services, and those are available to the women when they leave being in custody as well. So the continuation of services has been talked about a lot today. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, I'm Joe Keller. I'm representing the Gavin Foundation. The Gavin Foundation was started about 50 years ago with the Gavin Homes. It was started by a parole officer who recognized even back then that there was a connection between the inmates that he was dealing with and their substance abuse issues. And since then, we now currently have 3 adult male houses. We have a detox and CSS down in Quincy. We have diversion programs in 5 different courts, and we also have currently started our mission model program, which has been offered in Norfolk County, and is now being expanded to Suffolk County to help people as they come out of incarceration. So we look forward to working with you, and thank you to all the candidates.
Hello, Gabriella Priest, and I'm the Director of Community Resources for Justice. And at CRJ, we run community-based residential reentry programs in 4 different states. We have 2 currently in Boston for Suffolk County. We used to have 3. The McGrath House, which was a program similar to what Ashley mentioned earlier, was a 30-bed program for women transitioning out of incarceration. That unfortunately closed in April due to a reduction in funding. But we do currently have 2 other programs, Coolidge House and Brook House in Boston, that provide case management, wraparound services to connect individuals returning from incarcerations to systems in the community like Project Place and Whittier Health Street, substance use, mental health treatment, and to guide them through using an evidence-based risk need responsivity model. The Brook House program is a 65-bed program in the Fenway neighborhood. Unfortunately, only 10 of those beds are currently funded, and I know it was mentioned earlier that there's legislation pending for that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Denise De Las Mesas, and I am Medical Director of Boston Homeless Program. Our program has been in existence for over 30 years. Our mission is to provide the highest quality and dignified care to homeless individuals and members of families who are homeless in the greater Boston area. We do so utilizing multilingual and diverse teams that are multidisciplinary and include social workers, providers of all disciplines, nurses, case managers. And we actually provide care at over 40 sites in the greater Boston area. We provide tons of services, which include patient-centered medical homes to provide primary care services, really robust HIV team for individuals who are homeless and have HIV, as well as hepatitis C clinics, our family teams, and also street outreach. We're excited to be here. Thank you so much to you all, and also to Sheriff Tompkins and Superintendents Smith and Sumner. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gary Bracey. I run the Chief Bracey test-taking community. And we're here teaching the inmates certain skills for test-taking. We teach speed reading and mind mapping and memory skills, all these things in hopes that they're able to take entrance and promotion exams. I'm very grateful for the sheriff for having us, and we're very grateful that everybody took the interest to come in today. Thank you.
Thank you all for service providers. Oh, yes, please have a seat. You don't have to stand. And I just want to mention that, you know, by and large, the sheriffs in the Commonwealth do very good work. Not every sheriff's office does what the sheriff's office does to bring in this level of service and to maintain it consistently. And it actually should be, standard and it should be consistent. So we're now going to move to closing statements, and each of the candidates will now have a minute and a half to give closing remarks. We're going to go right to left, starting with Ms. Slipper. Ms. Champion, can I say Ms. Slipper?
There is a Clifford the Big Red Dog.
No, well, there's a Linda Clifford who actually was a disco singer. I'm dating myself. We're going to start with Ms. Champion.
So my name is Linda Champion. I'm a candidate for Suffolk County District Attorney. I would ask all of you to go on to my website, www.champion4forda.com, and just learn a little bit about my story. It's very hard to come here and speak to you and give you 1 minute increments of our thoughts and our ideas, but I think that if you would go on the website, read my story, you'll learn a lot more about me. I say that I want to be a champion for change, but change is hard, it's difficult, it doesn't come easy, and I alone can't do it. For the people who will be soon returning citizens to the community, I ask that you really hold people accountable for some of the things that they're telling you. You need your identification card. I've spoken with Kevin Sibley. I've also spoken with the Department of Vital Statistics. If you need a copy of your birth certificate, they're willing to waive that fee for you to get a copy of your birth certificate. One of the steps to getting your ID is to have proof of who you are. Work with the city of Boston, work with the people who are calling on themselves to say that they're there to help you. Really make sure that they help you. If you need housing, if you need access to jobs and opportunities, there are programs there that are designed to help you. My website is there, and anyone can always reach out to us and let us know that you're in need of services. But please go onto the website, get involved with this race, get active. Your voice matters, your vote matters, and I'm asking for your vote on September 4th of this year. Thank you.
Maloney?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time, for your attention, sincerely. It's an incredibly important race. As I mentioned before, I am the only independent that will be on the ballot in November. I ask you to ask me questions. Stop me in the hallway. Next time I'm in the House of Correction. Ask me what my thoughts are on any given topic. I'm an open book. I have nothing to hide. I've been practicing criminal law for 10 years, and I've started a number of businesses in the meantime. I say that because running the district attorney's office is not just about your legal experience. Everyone up here has legal experience, but it's also about managing a very, very large staff with a large amount of conflicting personalities and different ideas how to get the ball over the line. My website is dasuffolkcounty.com. I appreciate your time today, and thank you very much.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Thank you, everyone. This is an incredibly special experience for me. I never thought in my life that we would be talking about innovative criminal justice reform in a House of Correction with people who are here. I firmly believe that the people closest to the problem are closest to the solution, and we need to start listening a lot more. What I want you to see is that this is my core. My core is trying to use smart strategic solutions as alternatives to jail to get people to the things that make them strong so they can lift up and out of the system. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And what I can tell you that with me, I give a fundamentally different model of a candidate. So please choose me. I have a fundamentally different experience, fundamentally different choices, and I've proven my fundamentally different values in my almost 30 years of experience in the criminal justice system. And I will get you fundamentally different results. There's a quote, and that is that the light at the end of the tunnel is not the illusion, the tunnel is. And we can actually change what is happening here in this county, and we can be a leader for the rest of Massachusetts. What I want to do in this DA's office is be a leader so that this DA's office can live again, breathe again, hope again, and believe again. We can do different to get different. Please vote for Shannon McAuliffe, September 4th. Thank you.
Good afternoon now. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate all the questions that were asked, and I appreciate the thought that was put into all of them. And as you think about your vote, because you will have a vote for the district attorney coming up, I want you to think about the role that we play in the community and also what I'm able to provide if I'm able to be district attorney. The role that you may imagine a prosecutor plays is traditionally in the courtroom. And I think as I've shown today and through my background and experiences, I personally believe that our role should be and can be outside the courtroom and in places like this room and out in the community. It's what I've been doing in my career with people that are in the back of this room, and I do on a regular basis, and it's how I would structure the office if I'm district attorney. Because we can and should be working with service providers, like the people that have spoken with you here today, and with you directly to make sure that this is the last time you're ever inside of a facility like this. But one of the other things I want to make sure we remember in all of this discussion is that the district attorney's office stands up for and represents victims of violent crime and victims of crime throughout the county. I'm sure if we did a show of hands, many of you would have either been a victim of crime in the past or a family member who has. And that's the primary role of the district attorney. Having the 10 years of experience doing this work, prosecuting murder cases, supervising others in the prosecution of cases, and having the experience to know when to give someone a second chance and when to focus on the long-term impact and safety of the community is what I bring to the table. And I look forward to the opportunity to earn your vote on September 4th. Thank you guys all for being here. I appreciate it.
Ms. Rollins?
Thank you very much, ACLU sheriffs, plural, and you guys for caring enough to come and to ask us important questions. This is a really important job. And in Boston, if we think about our history here, we've never had people that look like this, some of us, up here vying for a position where we would actually get to make decisions that deeply impact our communities. And by our communities, I mean everyone in Suffolk County, but overwhelmingly the people that are sitting in this room are poor, addicted, people of color, and I don't know whether there are any ICE detainees in this room now, but there are people who are ICE detained in this facility as well. So I want to be the person that tells you I have actually led large groups. We can talk about whatever we want with respect to what we see, the change being in this office. If you can't get the 275 people in that office to do it, you're not qualified to do this job. And I have led incredibly large groups of people, 150 people, many of them lawyers, but I also have a life experience. I've been in this very place, visiting my siblings. I have seen what happens when you are incarcerated and when you come out. The struggles you have, I'm willing to work with you and fight for you. And I'm qualified for it. I'm excited about the change. Please get involved. I hope to earn your vote September 4th and your family members' votes. Thank you.
Mr. Carvalho.
I too ask for your support on September 4th. You know, one thing that we know for sure is that everybody's here is a lawyer, everybody's here is experienced, everybody's proud of their resident. And when I began, when I opened early, I said that I'm the only one that's sitting up here with that experience. But 2 decisions away, I could have been sitting in your seat. So I understand what the criminal justice system is about. At 17 years old, I was arrested for doing justice. I have a criminal record. But yet, because of chances that I got, because of teachers, because of God really, I stand here today. The privilege of home to Mass Hampers, to go to Howard West School of Law, DC, to come back to this community, to prosecute. I'm telling you about the lenses I've had, right? To prosecute cases in Roxbury, in Gunport, and now to see, that people in our community is a cycle, in and out. To go and become a lawmaker and change the system. To get new tools for us to make sure that people like you are not just coming in to be forgotten, that you can come back to a community that deserves you, rehabilitated, if not with housing, ability to grow old. That's what I want. When will you have an opportunity to let someone that has these opportunities, that has these experiences next to your turn? That's why you should vote for me September 4th. Thank you.
Thank you all, and Rashawn Hall will now give closing remarks, and the forum will adjourn.
Thank you very much, everyone. Let's give our candidates another round of applause. You all have just witnessed and been a part of history. This has been a fantastic and transformative moment in the collective conscience of our democratic republic. But more importantly, this was just dope, because when else is something like this going to happen? This is an idea that comes out of advocacy from folks who have been involved in the prison abolition movement and the collective organizing of the ACLU and the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department to bring forward this event that centers and prioritizes the life and experience and voice of the people who are closest to the problem, the folks who are the experts in their own reality, in their own situation, and to pose questions to these folks who are vying to be one of the most powerful individuals in this criminal legal system is mind-blowing. I want to thank the women and men who volunteered to be a part of this and to ask these questions. Can we give them a round of applause? Real talk. Truth be told, some of those questions were better than the questions that we've come up with from St. Margaret's. I'm like, oh, but that's why it's important, because you all are living the experience and your votes matter. You all have been registered to vote. There's some registration initiatives that happen within the House of Corrections as well as in National Street, and we hope that that continues. But in addition to your vote, your voice matters, because you ask these questions of these people. Your voice matters because you're connected to community beyond these walls. Your voice matters because it's going to shape and transform the trajectory of this office. So it's not just about reform, but it's about dramatically changing what the role of prosecutor is. And we thank you all for participating in that and helping and shape and cultivate a new reality for a new criminal legal system that does not use the old systems of holding people back, but allows them to grow. So thank you all. Thank you again to the sheriff. Thank you to our wonderful moderator, Secretary Cabral. To our timekeepers, to the Superintendent Smith who helped facilitate all this, to all of the service providers, again to our candidates, to the ACLU. This has been a fantastic and transformative and amazing experience. Again, on September 4th is the election day for the primary election, then on to the general election. For those of you who will continue to be detained, there will be absentee ballots that will be made available to you. But there's also the opportunity once you are released to go out and vote in person. We strongly encourage you to do that, but also to be connected in community to the folks who can go out and do the same. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
It's the sheriff's house. Sheriff gets the last word.
Getting the last word after that oratory makes it really difficult. Plus, he said everything that I would have said. So, most importantly, this has been an engagement in the civics process, which is ultimately important. And if anyone thinks that folks that are inside an incarceration facility does not have anything to say that is going to move our society forward, they are diabolically wrong. So I want to thank the men, I want to thank the women, I want to thank the candidates for coming today. You all have a great day, but please, as you leave, particularly the media, please pass the message along that this is no longer your grandfather's sheriff's department. We also, to quote the state representative, are going to be a part of the solution. Thank you so much.